All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Harris, how's it going?
It's going well, man. How's it going with you?
Oh, it's not bad. It's pretty good. Warmer weather coming, which is nice.
I mean, don't get me started on the weather.
Oh, yeah. It's been a
It's
bit
like-
temperamental.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
17 degrees, and the next day there's like a snowstorm.
There is a snowstorm. This week was a little weird.
Yeah,
How's, Ramadan going for you?
it's going well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't complain.
fasting.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Ramadan every year in the Islamic faith,
Yep,
we fast 30 days.
yep. Sunrise to sunset.
Yeah,
No food, no water.
yeah. Sunrise
Seems-
meaning it's like we're around 5 o'clock. that
Yeah,
we
5
start,
o'clock. Yeah,
and then we end
8 o'clock.
8,
Sunset.
8:30.
No food, no water. It is pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does teach me discipline. I'll you know what? Like, I think that when you're hungry,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to get angry. It's easy to,
Angry.
yeah, and like just to like, be upset about things and all of that. And I think that, at least during this month every year, I kind of step back whenever I'm feeling a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And then I make sure that, does it really matter? Does it mean anything? And then if it does, I should act accordingly. It makes me more present
Mm-hmm.
in any of like the situations I'm in, if that makes sense. I'm not passive.
Yeah. The one thing I've realized about that Ramadan really reminds me is that sometimes you just spend way too much time preparing food, eating food, doing all that stuff. Sometimes when you're skipping lunch, it's like, okay, great. I can
Yeah.
continue working. It's actually not too
Yeah.
bad. It's funny. It's funny how...
Normally it's not like I eat that much. I don't
Yeah.
always have lunch, but it's like I need the coffee and I need water.
yeah.
And those two things.
Yeah, and the time it requires you to prepare lunch, to
Yeah.
go out and buy lunch, it is
Yeah.
time that's
Yeah.
sometimes like, what the hell? I could be working.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So since we're talking about work and all this stuff and just balance, I thought that for today's topic, we'd talk about the topic of work-life balance. And the questions I wanted to answer today were as follows. What does work-life balance mean to you? How do you balance your work life and personal life? So we'll ask each other that question. Number 3, how do you know if your work-life balance is wrong? Number 4, do successful people generally get work-life balance wrong? And last but not least, if we do have time, we'll talk about whether or not work-life balance is a myth. And I'm sure we'll cover that as we go over the questions. So number 1, Taras, what does work-life balance mean to you?
For me, it's, I guess, let's start off with
Yeah.
what the definition generally
Right,
is.
okay.
Right?
What
People,
work-life balance is.
work-life balance, I think when people hear that, they're like, all right, how do I divide my home time and my work time, right?
Yeah, correct.
For me, it's not that. I don't really have that bifurcation. For me, it's more like I have responsibilities in different areas, and I need to make sure I give attention to all those responsibilities in a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like whether it's like dealing with my clients, whether it's like the relationships that I have with my parents, my wife, my siblings, my friends. So it's making sure I balance everything and give everything its due.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even off the bat, what I can say is that entrepreneurs versus someone who's an employee, it's a very different
yeah.
work-life balance.
Yeah.
Naturally, as an entrepreneur, no matter what hour, if something goes wrong in your business, you're required to handle it,
Yeah.
right? So that could be a Saturday, that could be a Sunday.
Yeah.
But if there is an emergency, you're the guy that's
Yeah.
going to have to go fix that
Yeah.
emergency. But as an employee, I feel like at times it's a bit more sort of laid back. Like you can have your weekends most of the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I feel like it's more like it depends on certain jobs you can't have
Certain
weekends.
jobs, yeah, require you to work weekends for sure. There are certain jobs that require you to have a lot of ownership, and it's almost like you're an entrepreneur type of you have an entrepreneurial attitude, but you work at an organization. They sometimes have fire drills, and you're required to put in the weekend to get those things done.
But at the end of the day, it's also, I feel like when you're an employee working somewhere, it's more task oriented. So if you're working the weekend, you got to get like task A and B and C done.
Yeah.
I think with entrepreneurs, you're like the CEO of everything. So if anything,
No matter how
especially when
small.
your business is smaller, right?
Yeah.
If something comes up, you have to answer it. I feel like any business with revenues below like 10 million, it's like I don't know if this is an arbitrary one, but that's what I feel like. The CEOs or the owners of those businesses have to be making a lot of decisions actively. I think getting above that is when you start having another layer of management that's making the day-to-day decisions, and then you're making more visionary stuff. But that's also why I think a lot of businesses just kind of stop at 10 to 20 million.
And I mean, to answer your question as well, I think work-life balance, the way I see it and what it means is, try to just have balance out your personal life. Have the time for your personal stuff. So the weekends to enjoy with your family, do whatever it is that you need to do, enjoy your hobbies, and then have your work life. But like we're saying, as an entrepreneur, it's kind of harder to really
but also
bifurcate the two.
I think with the entrepreneurship, you still have to have discipline. I feel like, at least for me, when earlier on, I would feel the need to respond to everybody right away. So even if they emailed me over the weekend. And then after a while, I was like, no, like they can wait until Monday. Only the high priority stuff is going to be answered here. Because I understand, like, okay, a lot of people, it may be urgent to them, but it's not urgent to, like, their whatever we're doing, whatever service they're providing them. It's not urgent to that, but it may be urgent because they're thinking about it. And for every client, it may be like, hey, listen, like, well, why can't you just answer a question over the weekend? It takes you 15 minutes. Well, like, for you, it's 15 minutes. For me, if every single client was doing that, I would be answering every single client. I'll be here. I'd have no weekends. And then,
so true.
Obviously, in the long run, it affects your performance, and you can't perform properly either. So it is sometimes putting those boundaries up. But sometimes enough times, actually, there's enough things going wrong that you need to be making sure that everything's being done correctly.
I guess that's a nice way to answer, actually, our second question, which was going to be, how do you balance your work life and personal life? And you said create boundaries, like very distinct ones. And then maybe let your clients know that, hey, no, like whatever your issue is, I'll get to it when, I'm back at the office.
I mean, it does
these boundaries.
At the same time, I'm not saying, I'm never going to work like the weekend. I'm never working. Like, I'm working a lot of weekends. Right? Like, I don't think I have Saturdays really off.
Let's be very clear. He's not saying he's not working weekends. He is. He's just not answering client emails. Right?
So it's a lot of it's like, you know what? I think I only have Sundays off. And evenings, I will work on evenings if I have to. Right? Often enough. I mean, it's a bit of a different thing because when you're an entrepreneur, your business is your baby. You love your baby. You enjoy spending time with your kid. And you really want it to, like, do well. And you're putting in all of this energy. I mean, sometimes it has its times, and you're like, you know what, I don't like this kid. Like, it can move out. But then, after a while, you're like, all right. Like, I mean, I quit all the time. But, like, when you think about it, you're like, no, like, I really want to put in the energy. I want to put in the effort to make sure this thing becomes something. And it's not about monetary gain. It's about, I don't know, it's just like a gratification that you've created something, and it's working, and you're helping people, like, you're giving or you're providing a service to individuals. It could be a good as well, but in my case, it's a service, and you're creating jobs. There's a lot of things going on that you're like, you're vested in it to be like, whoa, would be really nice if it's like just running smoothly.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about just, this whole question about how do you balance your work life and personal life. Even for me, working for an employer, like you said, sometimes you're required to work the weekends. If you want to get ahead and move up the corporate ladder, you can't just sit back and be like, I'm just going to work an 8-hour or 9-hour shift. You need to put in the time in the evenings sometimes to go above and beyond what's required, to go above and beyond what the mandate is, to really add value and show how you can add value to the company. That requires you to sometimes work the evenings. Even right now, as we're going through COVID, a lot of people are working from home. And one of the complaints for a lot of people working from home is that this bifurcation between work life and personal life has gone away, right? They're working longer. They're being asked to start earlier and later, all this other stuff. I mean, if you're going to work for in any kind of field that's progressive, like tech, finance, etc., Maybe government's not like this, but I would say you don't necessarily work a 9 to 5
Yeah.
type of job. You work longer than that.
You're what is it, the term? You're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, entrepreneur. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the term.
And I think I feel like people who really excel in their careers, there's a certain level in the beginning where a lot of just ability can get you by, right?
Yeah.
But as you get further on in your career, you need to be providing value that's not just task oriented, like, oh, when I see A, do B. You have to be more critical in your thought, and you really have to, in a lot of ways, create your own job where you're like, okay, these are the things that I'm doing, and it's not like a systematic, every month you know which week you're doing what. It's a lot of figuring out, helping solve the problems the business is facing in whatever department you're in.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So how do you know if you've gotten your work-life balance wrong? How do you know it's wrong? When it's just not going well? I think, well, why don't I go first?
Yeah.
The way I was going to answer this question is really when something else in your life that's quite important to you is starting to suffer. Right? Like, I don't know, your relationship with your wife is really starting to suffer because you're not home for very long periods. Your relationship with your kids, stuff like that, I think is.
But I mean, so there's a caveat to that too.
Yeah.
I mean, in all those relationships, just as there's boundaries for business, there should be boundaries for relationships.
Yeah, no,
And
there
like,
should
hey,
be.
listen, and I know that there was a Kevin O'Leary interviewer talk where he was talking about he was teaching his engineering class, and at the end of the engineering, have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't heard.
Okay, so at the end of this engineering class, like, this student kind of raises his hand and he's like, I've got a problem. And he says, Kevin Leary's like, apparently, like, what's going on? He goes, I've created this like amazing algorithm to help like hedge funds and compliance. And like, he's in his like last or third year or whatever, like, of engineering, and he's like trying to get that degree done. And he's like on the weekends, whenever he's got any time, he's like creating this product, and it's, I don't know if it was cash flow positive, but apparently like it was doing well, but it required a lot of time. And he was saying that like my fiance, she says like, hey, listen, like you're spending so much time here, all this other nonsense, like you got to pick either me or the business. And so the advice Kevin O'Leary gave this guy was, what's easier to replace, a business like that or a fiance? Right? And so I mean, the point of the whole thing was he was trying to get at, he's like, hey, listen, like, it's like, he's not trying to say use people, but at the same time, the people in your life need to know like what you're about. Right?
Yeah.
So they need to know those boundaries. So if you're passionate about business, you cannot be in a relationship with somebody who does not understand that.
Yeah.
That's not a good relationship to be in. If they don't understand, and then it's not like you're going to have them suffer, or whoever's in your relationship, but they also need to understand where you're at. So it's creating those boundaries in all of your relationships as well, not just your business, as to what your goals are, what you're kind of aiming for. And then once you've got those boundaries down, I think it takes a lot of introspection, right?
Yeah.
Like understanding, okay, well, if I, like, what kind of relationship do I want with my wife? What kind of relationship do I want with my parents? What kind of relationship do I want with all these people? And I think, like what you said, like if it starts to suffer, that's when, I guess, I agree, and you're kind of getting it wrong. You need to reevaluate.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, man, I don't know. Like, sometimes I feel like it's a difficult question to answer, because sometimes people are like, okay, you could be in a relationship, like a relationship with your parents. I mean, I don't know. Like, a lot of times parents just want a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to tell them, like, okay, well, I can give you this much.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just parents. It could be anybody, right, in your life, spouse being one of them. But it's really understanding when they're crossing their boundaries, but you need to understand when you're crossing yours as well. Like, you need to understand how much is it right. And that's a difficult question to answer. It's something that's more, it requires introspection in what you want out of your life.
Yeah. I go back to that famous Jack Welch quote, which he said, work-life balance is a myth. There isn't work-life balance. There are work-life choices. And what he meant by that is when you're making choices, right? Naturally, if you're choosing to stay late at work one evening, something else in your life is suffering. Like,
Yeah.
it's not suffering, but it's to the detriment of something else,
Yeah.
right? You're taking away a little bit of time
Yeah.
from something else. Either that's time spent with your kids, your wife, etc. So I think, those choices are different for everybody. Someone wants to, I don't know, build their business bigger. They'll work a little harder, work the weekend, etc. As a result, a part of their other life will have less time, and maybe that part of their life won't be able to develop and stuff like that. There is one good quote I like here that I found from Dolly Parton. I think she was an actress or something. But yeah, it says, "Never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So it's a good reminder, especially to a lot of workaholics, that,
Yeah.
like, you got to build a life as well.
Are you working to live or are you living to work?
Yes. And along the same lines, another one is, no one on his deathbed ever said, "I wish I had spent more time at the office."
Yeah.
Right? Like, nobody says that. Nobody says that when they die.
But then that goes back to like what I'm saying. Like, I don't think, like, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're at the office,
Yeah.
you're not like wanting to be at the office either, but you're trying to build something that's more of an idea, a concept. It's like something that's bigger than you. That's why you're spending that time.
Yeah.
Right. And when you look back and you're like, whoa, I created this company or this thing. And it's different things for different people. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you could be a great musician and you're able to spend so much time practicing and you could play these amazing pieces. That's awesome too. You could be an athlete, whatever you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. That practice, right, is not the finished product. When you're at the office, it's not the finished product, right? So nobody in the same breath would say, for example, I wish, I practice an hour more longer or whatever. At that point, everybody's gonna be like, I wish, I spent more time with family and this and that. But I mean, at the same time, there's a balance to everything.
Yeah. And no, for sure. For sure. Interesting stuff. I was going to ask you, actually, on this whole work-life balance thing and just choices. Do you find sometimes that, and I'm getting conscious of this as I get older, it's really quality time that you need to spend with your loved ones rather than the amount of time? Because as you mentioned, as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about your business. I'm sure you go home, and even when you're not working, you're thinking about work, right? And I tend to find that that's really important to have. And sometimes you just need to stop and do whatever, pray, meditate, etc. And just be very conscious with how you're using your time and spend quality time with the people around you as opposed to just time.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I 100% agree, because there's a lot of times I'm having a conversation with my wife.
Yeah.
She's talking to me, and all of a sudden I zone out, and she could tell right away. She's like,
you're
gone.
not paying attention.
What's going on at work?
Yeah.
So, 100%. Like, you could spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with somebody and actually be present and listen to them.
Yeah.
And that's worth more than like 2 hours of loitering around them.
Loitering around, being on your phone, being absent. Yeah. No, totally agree. Totally agree. Do you think, I guess this is our fourth question, but do you think successful people generally get work-life balance wrong? It's a very personal question, because work-life balance, like we said, means different things to different people. People make different choices. But in general, if you were to just, make a hazard a guess, do you think in general successful people get work-life balance wrong? Because, I go, and the reason why I put this question here is sometimes you do see it, like successful men, successful women in that regard too. They're at the top of their game, but they're divorced. They're at the top of their game, they're not married, or they didn't have any kids. Or, men or women. It's not to pick on either gender. But men or women, it could be, I don't know. They were just into their work. They never really had the time to do anything else.
I mean, there's we got to define terms. When you say success, I'm assuming you're talking about material success.
Material success. So successful entrepreneurs, they have built big businesses. They're successful in their corporate careers, like C-suite level type stuff.
So, I mean, don't they, like, there's studies done where, like, C-suite or CEOs, there's a certain, like, majority of them can be considered psychopaths, right?
Okay.
All right. So there is, like, studies behind the type of people that rise to the top.
Yeah.
I do think that, again, going back to what you said earlier, you have to make a sacrifice, and it's about what you're sacrificing. Either you're going to sacrifice, perhaps, spending time with a loved one to stay at the office, or you're sacrificing staying at the office for the loved one.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with, I know, like, a lot of people are like, oh my God, staying at the office, like, obviously you go for the loved one, there's nothing wrong with staying at the office, especially if like that job provides for your family, right? There's a lot of meaning that goes to it. It may not be directly there when you're, typing up that Excel sheet, but there's meaning there. But at the end of the day, it's all about priorities. So you can't really get it wrong. It's about what you prioritize. So if you don't prioritize personal relationships, and it's not something that you like, it's something that you're willing to sacrifice, all the power to you, because then you can devote that time to things that matter to you. Whereas if, like, I would not be able to sacrifice either one, to be honest. Like, I can't sacrifice my personal relationships for work, but at the same time, I cannot sacrifice what I'm doing at work for personal relationships either.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, for me, I kind of reevaluate at different stages of my life and different stages of the business, how much time should I be spending where?
Yeah.
Because it's not the same throughout your life either. It could change, right? Earlier on, you could spend a little bit more time when you're younger, right? And I guess it's easier to learn because, I mean, I'm seeing that as I get older.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a huge difference, but you can see, like, you're like, I really don't want to figure this thing out. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody just tell me what to do here, right? If there's a new program or anything. But, like, it's like earlier on, if you put in that energy and, for example, you learn and you set up a half-decent foundation, perhaps later on you can spend more time with your family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For me, for example, a lot of things is like, I got to put in a lot of time now for, like, when I have, like, a lot of kids, I want to be able to spend time at home with them. But so I'm trying to see if I could set up, like, my play correctly.
Yeah.
I could spend time with them later on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, these are all personal choices. So I don't know if you could get it wrong, but it is definitely what do you prioritize and how are you going to make that a reality?
Yeah. I guess in terms of the way you deal with it, how do you tell your wife or your family that, I got to work longer today or I'm doing this? I think for me, when it comes to these situations, I tend to find it's important to just communicate with your family.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to work late, tell them you're going to work late. Tell them you're working on this. Give them a little bit of information as opposed to being that type of guy that just goes, no, I got to work.
Yeah.
Not say anything.
A lot of times what I would say to my wife, at least, is that, hey, this week's rough. Next week I can give you some time.
Yeah. Okay, so clear boundaries, expectations.
Yeah, so it's just like a client. You gotta give them, like, direction, or else they'll be like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, well, this week is rough because all this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Right. And I would appreciate it if, like, you helped me out and didn't stress me out.
Yeah.
Right? Not that she stresses me out because she's probably listening, but and then I'm like, okay, next week around this day after Wednesday, I'm good. So why don't we do something at that time? Or, like, I could spend time then.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my focus.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm saying, I'm saying exactly that. You need to communicate and just express to people that,
how do
I'm
you
busy.
do it?
Yeah, no, same way, exactly the same way. And like you said, telling that person that, hey, I'm really busy this week. Let's try to do this next week.
Yeah.
Because then it makes them understand that, okay, there is, like, a clear goal. We've outlined a time for this. And it makes them, like, and they root for you. When you're busy, they're asking you, how is everything going? Do you need anything? Like, anything stressing you out? Do you want to talk about? They understand the position you're in, and they're willing to, like, help you, and encourage you, which is great.
And it's important that you follow through. So when you say you got a free time,
for sure. You follow through the next week. Yeah, otherwise you get in trouble. Okay, so I guess we've come to our last question. Is work-life balance then a myth? A lot of companies say, and the reason why I put this question is, a lot of companies, like even Goldman Sachs and whoever the hell it is, right? They go, work-life balance. We have this with this work-life balance thing. And I think recently what we saw in 2021 is that a group of analysts apparently made this to you. I don't know if you heard this story. It was in the news, but they created this deck that showed how many hours they're working as analysts in investment banking. And it was something stupid like 95 hours or something crazy like that.
Are they sleeping at the office?
Yeah. Well, I guess now they're sleeping at home.
Working remotely.
Working remotely, literally at any time. But what do you think about that? Work-life balance. When companies pitch it, when people tell you this kind of stuff, do you just shrug? Do you say, oh, this is stupid?
Okay, so
what
for
do
me,
you think about it?
Like, work-life balance, first of all, a lot of people who are really, upset about work-life balance, I feel like perhaps maybe they don't know where they're headed.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you know where you're headed, you know why you're making the sacrifice today. Right. So it's very clear to have, like, it's very important to have these clear goals. Reason being, like, a lot of times when I feel like a lot of people talking about work-life balance, it's more of a, hey, I'm at work for my employer, and it's a battle between that and my me time, which is when I'm spending time with my family, doing what I like, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But to treat that work time as somebody else's time, that's a lot of time that you're just kind of negating. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're saying that this is for somebody else. In reality, you should make all of that your personal time and be like, all right, well, I'm here. What's my goal?
Yeah.
Okay. If your goal is to just work there 9 to 5 and then like go home, nothing wrong with that, but own it. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's not like, oh, I'm just I gotta like go home and do my personal stuff. You give your best efforts to your work, and then you go home. But if it's something where you're progressing, and a lot of times these like Goldman Sachs guys, a lot of these guys who are pulling like that many hours
Yeah.
in any professional services firms, they're not necessarily going to be lifers. Right?
No.
They're looking for an exit.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out what your exit is. And then okay, well, if I'm working 95 hours, I'm working 95 hours. So at this time, I could get this, achieve this, and get
It's
this.
like temporary.
Yeah. And so if you have that goal, then it's not like work-life balance. You can't have your freaking cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to understand, like, what you're aiming for. Those 95 hours you're putting in for experience, to know, to, like, understand a lot of things and gain insight. And that insight is what you're going to use for the next stage of your career, your life, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. For me, like when companies put work-life balance in their marketing brochure, it's kind of like you're like, really? What does this even mean? It's tough. It's one of those things where you're like, I don't know why you're putting this here because you know I'm going to be working 80 hours. So how is this work-life balance really? It's just one of those things. Yeah, I don't know. If you put it in a company brochure, you're always going to get it wrong. Someone's going to get pissed off. But I'd say this, like, if you're the type of person that wants to achieve something in your life, like you want to build a business, etc., that's a choice you're making, and understand that there are sacrifices required with that choice you're making. It's not going to be, completely balanced. It's going to be, you made this choice, now you kind of stick with it, and you have to face the consequences, if you will, right? If you chose to go into investment banking, you knew, like everybody knows, it's long hours. It's not something that isn't
And they pay
known.
you for those long hours.
They pay you very well. Yeah, you make God knows how many times the average American salary.
Like, I don't hear them complaining about how much you're earning.
Yeah.
They're complaining about the time they're putting in.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, what about
sure.
what they're banking?
Yeah. And if you're there just for the short term and you're going to go into, I don't know, from investment banking to private equity, then see it as a rite of passage to get to private equity, something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Do you feel like millennials, I don't know, feel entitled to this whole work-life balance stuff?
I feel like millennials feel like their job's a lifestyle. It's like more of a lifestyle thing, right? I work here, I work there. I do feel like a lot of millennials are like that. Not all.
Yeah.
It's not like our parents' time where it's like, yo, life is rough. You just got to work, and then you got to feed your family. If there's food on the table, you're lucky. That's good. Yeah. It's a blessing.
Yeah. Appreciate what you have.
So now it's more like, hey, listen, like I want a badge with this logo on there and tell people I work here. And so.
But I don't want to work very hard when I'm there. Yeah.
So there is a lot of like, and I need to be taken care of, and I need to be catered to, and there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that, but there are a lot of like millennial entrepreneurs as well and stuff like that.
There's a lot of hardworking millennials.
Yeah, which I think the media misses as well, because sometimes they go, millennials complain all the time. But no, there's some very hardworking millennials. A lot. All these startups, like they don't, they require hard work.
They're built on a lot of millennials.
All long hours and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think we can end it there. Any other takeaways? Work-life balance?
Know what you're going to sacrifice before you sacrifice it.
Yeah, you're making work-life choices, so know that whenever you make a choice, whether it's staying at work late or doing something else, something in your life is going to get less time.
Yeah.
All right. We'll leave it there.
Take care, guys.
See you on the next episode.